Hi, I'm Jordan, and thanks for checking out my podcast, All Truth is God's Truth. To understand a bit about what I'm hoping to achieve with this podcast, you have to know a bit about me and what I care about. And what I care about is what is true. We're going to talk a bit about science in this podcast. I think science has a lot to offer in terms of discovering what is true. I do have a science background. I went to school to get a bachelor's of science in physics, as well as a bachelor's of arts in biblical studies. After that, I moved on to get a PhD in astronomy, and that took me 8 very long years. I really should have finished much sooner, but I couldn't bring myself to write down any sentences in my dissertation that I wasn't fully convinced were actually true. So it took me a very long time to finish. After that, though, I had been planning to do a bit of teaching, but life took me a different direction. So here I am teaching theology now instead of science. But back to the point, science has a lot to offer in terms of discovering truth. In fact, the main way that we figure out what is true of the physical universe, and if it's about subatomic particles or atoms or molecules or the motion of the planets, anything about the physical material world, you should go to science. That's where you're going to figure out what's true about it. Now, of course, there's a lot of philosophy that kind of undergirds that, and we could say a lot more about that, but I want to keep this short. If it's physical, I think the right place to go to look for what's true about that's science. So that's a really neat, incredible, powerful set of tools for figuring out what is true. However, science also has a huge limitation. It says nothing about the non-physical world. For that, we would need to turn to some other field of study. And that's why I love theology, because it gives us another set of tools for discovering what is true. Now, to be fair, maybe you don't think there's a non-material component to reality. Maybe you're a naturalist and you think, if I can't touch it and feel it, it doesn't exist. And that's a whole different, philosophical discussion that maybe we can get into sometime. But once you've gotten over that initial hump and you think, I think there is something out there that's non-physical that does exist. Maybe it's a conviction that you think you have a non-physical component to yourself, that you really exist as more than just a meat bag. Then the question is, what sources of true information do we have about that non-material world? And in this podcast, we're basically going to make an assumption. It's going to be that the only reliable source of information about that reality is the Bible. Now, I admit I actually didn't always necessarily think this. I kind of meandered my way to there. I was raised in a Christian home, but my theology was, forming in my early years. And during college, I really dug into the critical scholarship. I wanted to understand what modern biblical scholarship had to say. And man, I got disoriented, and I would not have considered the Bible a reliable guide to who is God and what is true about us as humans spiritually. Ironically, the precipitator of my return to Christian faith, solid Orthodox Christian faith, was, of all things, that I sat down one summer and worked very carefully through a book called Basic Economics. But that is a story for another time. By God's grace, I came out of that experience actually more convinced than ever that the Bible really is the result of God actually speaking to and through humans throughout history, or as the book of Hebrew puts it, at many times and in various ways. But once you come to that conclusion, it becomes a matter of sorting out, what does the Bible actually say? And that's effectively systematic theology. So that's what we're going to do here. We'll do a bit of systematic theology. Now, I hope you can be a bit forgiving and gracious towards me. I'm a new podcaster. I really just have 2 microphones. We live in a very hot part of the world in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So we have air conditioners running all the time. We have kids running around, and you'll hear them in the background. It is a lot of fun to be doing this theology class, but I'm doing my best to give you guys an understandable recorded audio of the class. Anyway, so that's mostly what we're going to be doing. For now, we're mostly going to be doing a systematic theology class. Along the way, we may take some excursions into some of those other topics of science, history, or even philosophy. But my favorite thing about all of this is that as we dive into those topics, we can do so without any kind of fear or hesitation because of our confidence that, in the end, all truth really is God's truth.